Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help various alumni, whether it be athletes, whether it be fraternities, sororities, to network and connect within their affinity groups. This show, Athletes, Entrepreneurs, Alumni Journey, we interview former collegiate and professional athletes and people related to sports and talk about that transition out of sports and some of the challenges and their successes. And it's all about teaching aspiring athletes that there's life after sports. So we definitely encourage everybody to go out and listen to it and like it, and just ways that we can help athletes. I'm so excited today. We have Lisa Bonta Sumii on with us, and she's got a great story to share with us. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. So Lisa played soccer growing up, and ultimately, unfortunately, her career, like a lot of people, got derailed by injury. She went on to University of California at Santa Barbara, and throughout that college career, ultimately went into the mental health space and just really want to make an impact to help everybody. And then over the years, got into working in sports psychology, helping different athletes out. And today, it's what I was talking about before. My head spinning, and she laughed when I said it before. But this is so she founder and CEO of AthMindset. She has a podcast, Athlete's Mindset, and now the golden goose, I guess, of everything. So everybody talk about who's writing a book. She's doing that too. So where do you have the time?
Right. I mean, everybody asks me, like, when do you sleep? I'm like, oh, my self-care is really important. My mental health is really important. So I make sure that I'm doing all those things, but the things I'm doing give me energy. And like I'm able to use my time more productively and intentionally when I have things that I'm working on that mean a lot to me, that are in my purpose and that are meaningful. So it's
That's
all
great.
part of it's like the whole circular kind of energetic kind of spiritual kind of exchange. So it all feeds me.
That's good, and that's good advice for people too, to kind of to go after that. So I always like to talk about growing up playing sports, through youth sports into high school, ultimately, college. Talk about how that shaped you as a person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I stumbled upon, I guess I don't believe in accidents, but it was kind of not planned that I found soccer. And I think that soccer, for me as a young girl and the environment I grew up in, it was super important to have a safe place to be, a place that I could just be myself without any other expectations, a place where I had built-in sisters and friends and my teammates, and built-in mentors and in my coaches who did their best to kind of like mold us as human beings as well. It was so fun. I have lifetime friendships from my experience. Got to travel, got to go places I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do so without my sport. I learned how to become a leader, how to communicate, how to know my role and uplift others in theirs. So there's like so many really cool lessons I've learned, and like as a girl means a lot.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you hit on a lot of things. It's kind of like the athlete DNA, just that skill set that's built through the sports. The team camaraderie, the leadership, the persistence, all those that go along with it. Now, did you dream of being a professional athlete?
I didn't, because I don't think it was talked about. I dreamed of being a collegiate athlete. I dreamed of being a collegiate athlete.
Okay.
So, and that dream came to sort of a very painful halt when I got injured in my going into my senior year in high school. And my family didn't have the like wherewithal, the resources to help me recover physically and mentally. I don't think I even knew, they didn't even know that there was a mental recovery to injury that would play a big part and can play a big part in an athlete's kind of life after sports. So I went into college without those sisters, without those mentors, without my identity as an athlete. So I felt cut in half. I was only a student and an athlete. Went into college, already a tough transition for anyone. And then cut in half myself, not knowing how to, didn't have the social skills to like build relationships because they were already always built in. Didn't know how to navigate this big campus of UC Santa Barbara. Didn't know a lot of things. Didn't know how to use my body in a positive way. I always use it as an athlete. I knew how to train it for that. and to show up for it. But like now that I don't have that outlet or that way of expressing myself, like how do I eat? How do I exercise? How do I, use again my body positively? So there was a lot of things I went through, and like my mental health took a deep dive during those first 2 years of college, trying to find myself really.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I think that's I think the scenario that most athletes face, just depending on what it is. So whether, unfortunately for you, where it got cut short, or even these athletes, some that get injured in college, some that just play 4 years, but then it's it after that. And then I guess, the few that are fortunate to make it professionally, but at some point, they're also, getting to that level as well. So let's fast forward to college, and we talk a lot about education relating to this, and I know this is a big part of your career now, working with athletes and helping them and as they transition out of sports. So when you were at school, did you see I guess education there at the school to kind of help these athletes out and looking at some of these different areas, whether it be mental health, financial literacy? Was that going on at your school?
Well, it's interesting. I didn't play in college, as I just shared, but I dated a collegiate basketball player for the first 2.5 years of my college career. And the way that they supported them seemed lacking if I look back and reflect on it. Like they had study hall, this was years ago too. They had study hall, they had places they need to be. They were structured. They had meal time, game planning, post game, stuff like that. But nowadays they have like a dedicated tutor or dedicated student academic coordinator. They didn't have that then. And this is kind of a side note, truth be told, I helped him a lot with his academics. And I'm the girlfriend. Like, so that's, I think things have grown. And now that I do my work as a professional, a licensed mental health professional in collegiate sports across different colleges and universities, there's many, many more resources now. And the mental health resources are growing and becoming more and more important and valued, which will then also help the student athlete, have success in the classroom and academically too. So.
Right. And yeah, that's critical. And I think, yeah, like we said, I mean, things are changing now, which is great. And I think, we're trying to make an impact. We've talked about it offline, just trying to bring together different resources and help schools to continue to develop additional curriculum that helps these athletes out and in that journey afterwards. So another big area that we talk about is alumni connections. And so, I want to talk about it, I guess, twofold with you, is talk about when you were there and talk about, with your boyfriend playing basketball, were alumni coming back or even, coming back to the schools and working with, say, the athletes, but not just like for golf tournaments and things like that, but more so mentoring or helping that with career services?
Yeah. I mean, again, I dated him for about 2.5 years. I didn't see it. That doesn't mean maybe I wasn't aware of it or didn't even know to look for it. I don't remember him talking about that. I think the alumni came back for like the games,
Right.
cheer them on and be there and represent that way. But not that I could remember, recall, or hear him talking about. No.
Right. And I think like same thing. I mean, I think times are changing now. I mean, I know one thing obviously is the culture. I've talked to some athletes where they say a lot of it also depends on the coaching. So there's coaches that
Right.
want to mentor and help them. And then when there's coaching changes, that kind of the dynamic shifts a little bit. But I guess maybe in your dealings today, whether it be with your alma mater or you went on to grad school and there, are you
Yeah.
seeing more of an involvement of trying to get alumni to come back and help?
Yes. Yes. I think I see. Yeah. They're more visible. There's actually even, GAs or graduate assistants who are, graduated from the undergrad, but are now graduate students, right? And coaching. There's that. There's alumni funds for student athletes to use for their particular team or school for different resources, which is cool. So, I think I'm finding that I've learned that there are a lot of alumni who are creating like NIL platforms or like supporting ones that exist and prioritizing their alma mater. So I think there's more and more of it now for sure.
Which is great. And I think, we definitely recommend it. People need to tap into their alumni, and work together with them. And I guess kind of along the same lines, maybe give me some thoughts on networking, connecting, especially as athletes are still playing their sport.
No, I think it's essential and important. I mean, my whole thing is that I would love any student athlete who's competing to have multiple identities and multiple ways of connecting with people off their team as well. And having that deference and humility that there's something to learn from an alum who's been through what they're going through, and that there's some wisdom that can be gleaned there. So I think it's essential. I think the biggest barrier, and let me know what you think about it, is like the time, the maturity, the perspective to value that. And that the alumni have to meet the student athletes where they're at and make themselves accessible on the student athletes' terms. I think that would be like a really, really cool way to like bring those kinds of relationships to fruition, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's a two-way street. And I think some of it I've talked to some agents, and they've talked about how the best time to network and connect is when the athletes are still playing. And a lot of times they don't see that. And I think the more, guests and athletes I talk to, former athletes, I think when you're playing, depending on what level you're at, they kind of have the tunnel vision also. So
For sure.
it's, the athletes have to be willing to accept that. And it might even get into what we talked about too, is even down to the high school level of just teaching the importance of networking, connecting, and, whether it's with coaches or friends or parents, at that younger age. And then in college, to your point, before, is just not just the athletes, but talking to other people, other classmates, or, once you do get
Yeah.
out, talking to other alumni in different fields and working together.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I did I have a podcast as well, and I did an interview with two fifth-year senior female Yale collegiate soccer players. And they look back about like what they gleaned from not just alumni, but their upperclassmen who became alumni where they were still there. And the relationships, the importance of relationships. I think the word networking might be a little bit more like distant for a student athlete who's still an undergrad, but like building friendships, a support system, a community, maybe that's different kind of language. Again, just
Sure.
making it as accessible as possible. And then like giving them opportunities like internships, like that's a form of networking and mentoring, right?
Yeah.
Internships, community service, different things that they can do, NIL on the small scale, that they can give the student athletes opportunities for. It's become more competitive now, and they're more selective, for better or for worse, now that NIL is so up, like where they spend their time, how they spend their time. So yeah, it's with every relationship, it's a two-way street for sure, like you said.
Yeah, and you gave me a great segue into talking about NIL, name, image, likeness. So, give me your thoughts, both positive and negative, related to NIL.
Yeah, I mean, I think also I always try to start with the positive. So I think it's an opportunity for athletes to make money on their talent, their name, their image and likeness, and it not be misused or um, for the benefit of a school or a higher entity. That the athlete who is showing up, working hard, representing their school, um, that they get credit for that, and it may become in the form of scholarship or books or housing as well, not just cold hard cash. And if they give it cold hard cash, give some counseling around how to best utilize it. Or if it's trade, like a product, um, having value for that as well. It doesn't have to be cold hard cash. um, so I think the acknowledgement of the athlete is really, really important, and making it, yeah, like to benefit them there and now as they proceed through their academic experience. I'm finding and hearing that research shows that female athletes are benefiting more than male athletes, which is interesting. and we could dive into like the whole gender difference, which is another fascinating concept and discussion, but and that the female athletes are more likely to bring the opportunities to their other teammates, so then it becomes like a team deal. I think the negative is that we're professionalizing our athletes and sports too young. They don't have the ability or aren't there developmentally to understand the brevity of it or the gravity of it, and take it for granted. It can enforce sort of like this instant gratification kind of mentality. I think when there's anything new that's added to an athlete's sort of access to things, there has to be some counseling and education about how to do that in a healthy way. That benefits them and their families, but that doesn't harm them, psychologically or financially from, an individual aspect.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is education, and I talk about it a lot. And I think especially, I mean, a couple facets of it from a financial literacy standpoint. And it's I always say it's not just young athletes, it's young people in general. But all of a sudden, potentially, you get a windfall of money, and not realizing like, hey, you need to pay taxes on this, and there's different things that you need to do. So I think education is definitely important about it. I think another byproduct that I talk about sometimes too, and it'll be interesting to get your take on it, is social media. So obviously, a big part of NIL kind of ties into social media. Give me some thoughts on that, because there's the positives and negatives of that, but when you start turning into your world and from a mental health perspective, there are some, I guess you got to manage it the right way. So give me your thoughts and give some advice on the right way to manage social media and just some of the things to kind of avoid.
For sure. I mean, you hit it on the head. If not managed properly, it can negatively impact your mental health for sure, which includes your self-esteem, your self-image, FOMO, which is a big thing, fear of missing out, trying to keep up with it, keeping up with the Joneses, being current, making sure your content is something people want to look at. It's a lot of pressure. And again, our young student athletes don't have that education or sort of coaching on how to best use it. The ones who use it and have positive experiences with it are because they have had some coaching about how to leverage it for, using a positive platform, promoting your purpose, things like that, not just getting the bag, right? But I think that when student athletes and young people in general look to social media to be validated, to be a source of self-esteem, to be a source of a positive self-image, a lot of times they're going to be disappointed because you're competing with the next person who is only showing and posting positive things. And then there's this falsity that is their lives, that only what they show is what's going on. No one rarely posts when something's going bad or had a challenge, or which I think is very important to actually show that if you're going to use social media, that you can go through adversity and come out the other side more resilient, that's part of humanity and part of your growth as a person. But it's taken at face value, right? It's like, oh, look at her or look at him and they're doing this. Like, I want to do that. And this is what I'm going to do. And some people take dangerous decisions to do that. Like, I have an athlete now who's like, I'm skinny, I'm going to work out. He injured himself trying to get like some guy he saw on social media. Or a female athlete, like, I want to be like her. My body doesn't look like her. I'm going to not eat for a little bit, or I'm going to binge, or I'm going to do this. It's all unhealthy. It needs to be sort of governed, or like some aspect of oversight when we give our young people access to social media. I mean, on another tip is like, they can access anything, unhealthy stuff, X-rated stuff that's not healthy for the developing brain of a young person, that can be traumatic and harmful, access to images that are left unprocessed by the young human undeveloped mind. So they have it at their fingertips. We didn't have that growing up.
No.
And so it's like, they have access to so many things that are ungoverned, put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And and like you just said, I mean, you got to be very aware of what you're putting out there too. I mean, I always talk about, telling my kids along the way, don't put things in writing. And this is even prior to social media, obviously, or the what it is today. Just be careful of what you put out there. But one thing that was interesting, and you might be coming across this, but maybe it's a new phenomenon. But there was somebody talking about how like these athletes, like even star athletes, kind of getting bullied on social media, and it's an interesting twist because most of the times, maybe just the way it's been, the public persona is a lot of times it might have been the athlete that would be picking on or being the bully to maybe some of these kids that didn't have that skill set, and it's almost like the table is turned. I'm not saying all the time, but are you coming across that at all?
Well, if we take, we're speaking, what's the date today? June 14th, the NFL, not the NFL, sorry, the NBA championships just ended, right? And it brings us to the discussion of Jamal Murray. Like, I mean, he back in 2020, his IG was hacked. Basically, I mean, there's controversy about whether it was hacked or he released it and why he released it, of him and his girlfriend in a sexual act, right? And then there's lots of, what do they call it? Roasting. I don't know if they want to call it bullying yet,
Right.
but like roasting about the fact that that was released, roasting about parts of his body, the hair on his body, this and that. And like it's the word is out that they're still together, but they've both kind of like taken a hiatus or like less public presence on social media as a result.
Yeah.
And I would love to be a fly on a wall as to, what conversations those were as to why and how. And but that, and like his other athletes get on IG live and like tease him and roast him.
Yeah.
It seems like he has a good response to it. I don't know, it's positive, but who knows what goes on inside.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a level of shame and embarrassment. I mean, like his girlfriend, that it's not a great light that she was shown in, and it's a private moment.
Sure.
So that's tough. But that's an example, I think, of like how social media, even for the professional athlete, can be used against you or like actually give you a bad experience of it.
Right. So and again, I guess like the other things, it probably comes down to, from an educational standpoint, is maybe when they're younger and just teaching at a younger age some of the things. I was talking to one person, she was just saying how she was at a party after a championship, and one of the athletes, he was 21, but he had a drink, and before he was all across social media, she grabbed it, just to say, because it's all optics, and that's a lot of what people face on social media. So let's talk.
I do want to say, Rob,
Sure.
that like on from a human development standpoint and a brain development standpoint, the characteristic of a young man at that age from 18 to 24 or 25, they have poor impulse control. They don't think that they're ever going to get caught doing something bad
Right.
or wrong, that they are just living the life like I'm free to be me, and that there's never going to be a negative consequence. Like that's why car insurance premiums for that age of males is the highest of any other gender or age group ever, because there's that poor impulse control, immediate gratification thing. I'm never going to get caught type of thinking. And so at that age, social media, oh, it's just a video, it's just an image, doesn't matter. Like there's not that like sort of perspective of like what the impact can be. So just another note there is like makes that population of that age group very vulnerable. And that coaching and education is even more important.
Yeah, no, that for sure. So let's talk about again with the whole idea of the athletes transitioning out of sports, and especially since it's a big part of what you do in helping the athletes and working with them. Give us some perspectives on that, and maybe some advice to athletes that once their time is up, that there's a long way to go still, and give some of your thoughts and how you kind of coach them.
I find that those who have the healthiest, most positive experience transitioning out of their sport have other identities that they've already developed and feel good about and proud of before they leave their sport. That's easier said than done. And the other identities might be, you know, social activist, community service, activist or involved. I'm a musician, I'm an actor, I create things, I'm an author, like just different ways that they access different aspects of themselves. Some athletes are like, I feel like I don't have time for that, or feel like if I do that, that means I'm less serious about my sport. So we have to, like, you know, debunk those myths. And it's not like you're going to commit, like play the violin competitively like you do your sport. No, it's like an outlet. It's a creative outlet. It's a hobby. It's something else you're interested in. Developing your purpose, like finding what really makes you happy and brings peace to you, and exploring those things. Even dedicating like 2 hours a month to like make sure that you like try something new. And I think that's important, because I think too many times, and this was my experience, that you are a student and athlete and that's it. And so to value that these are full multidimensional human beings who happen to be good at something on a field, doesn't mean that's all they are. And that the things that they're learning as an athlete, like we kind of opened up the conversation about, will help in your life after sports. Absolutely. And to like be able to have language for like, what are those transferable characteristics and skills that you're going to take into the next chapter of your life, are super important.
Yeah. And it's sad because you talk about the identity, and, you know, a lot of times I was talking to one guy, and just former baseball player, and he just said that when he was done, when he finally realized it was over, he had that mindset, I'm a baseball player, and what am I without it? And I got to imagine that that's probably pretty prevalent in athletes. I mean, unless, like you said, there's ones that kind of immerse themselves in other things, and they kind of have, you know, that passion and passion in other projects and things that, and I guess that's kind of been somewhat of, as I've interviewed these athletes that have had success in transitioning out of sports and what they're doing today, and you know, entrepreneurship and leadership and you know, mental health and all these other areas. I think they seem to have that when they were going to school, where they were thinking of other things.
Or they can have it later after going through a tough, rough patch. Like one of my podcast episodes is Reggie Walker, former NFL player, captain, linebacker for many, many years. He left when he retired from football. He went into like this 3-year, like soul searching, hell on earth, he'll call it, time, because he didn't know who he was. He lost everything. And then the reason why he played, he realized, was to keep his demons at bay. So when he's not playing, these surface. He has to deal with all that. His mental health declines. He was suicidal. Like there's so many things. He had to grapple with his own trauma history. And now, I mean, he's an author, TEDx speaker. You know, he has some curriculum he's developed. He's an entrepreneur. So there's like, you can still get there. We want to make it less traumatic and less hard, and more of a fluid transition, instead of like, I'm done, I'm down and out for a good chunk of time, and then I rise. But everybody's journey is different. Everybody's, you know, way they get to who they are and get back to themselves is different. And it's not a lost cause if you don't have other identities, but if you can create them now, that would be good. It helps.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, great advice. And you know, hopefully that's the whole idea, is people to be inspired by it. And you're right. I mean, I've talked to some people that were, you know, have that same story, where maybe, you know, whether a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then just kind of turned it around. So let's fast forward to today and talk about again, the head spinning and all the different things you're doing. Let's talk about if you could talk about AthMindset and some of the things that you're doing to help, and you know, talk a little about your podcast and ultimately how people could find you.
No, thank you. I mean, I think, you know, I've been a licensed clinical social worker, basically a therapist, psychotherapist, all the same terminology for those who don't know, for over 20 years, and worked as a helper from a psychological standpoint for many years. Inspired by my daughter, who's now 16-year-old high-level softball player, shifted to work with athletes entirely. She helped me get back with my own athletic identity. It was a traumatic ending that I pushed aside for so long and didn't even want to deal with it. She inspired me to get some more like healing and help around that. And now I work in sports. I work in sports in professional sports as a professional in sports psychology. So I'm the mental health performance coach for the Oakland Roots Sports Club, first team men's pro team out here in the Oakland Bay Area. They compete in the USL, which is a division below the MLS. At this point, they're really cool because they're about Oakland. They're social justice oriented, very activistic in the ways that they show up. It's not just about winning or playing. So it jives with my values big time. With the visibility of that work, I'm in my third season now. Lots of organizations, schools, parents, individuals will come to me like, oh, you do that amazing work with the Roots. Can you do it with me? I'm like, there's one of me, but the need is there. And I'm one that will try to respond to those needs if I can. And so alongside my husband, he is the COO of AthMindset. We built this company that serves the clinical mental health needs and mental performance needs of athletes, coaches, teams, anybody in the sport ecosystem. And so we're really, really excited about it. It's growing. My goal is to have an AthMindset practitioner in every state of our United States. I have about 10 states covered right now. So I'm looking forward to it continuing to grow. I was invited to create a podcast. So I've been doing that for about 2.5 years with Eric Kazimoff at the helm of Sportsepreneur, who produces my podcast and yours, I believe, as well.
He's done some. He does a great job. And thank you, Eric. Shout out to you for introducing the two of us.
Yes. Shout out to Eric. He's a great person, just a caring, kind human. And good people introduce good people to one another. So yeah, shout out to you, Eric. And then in podcasting, which is interesting, I got connected with a person who I interviewed. She has an episode in my library. And now she's invited me to co-author a book. Her name is Dr. Tiana Woolridge. And for those of you who might know, she is the daughter of Orlando Woolridge, sure, former NBA player for the LA Lakers and other teams. But she is a doctor. She's a sports medicine doctor. And she's like, hey, yo, like, and a mental health advocate. And so she played collegiate volleyball at Princeton. And so we are coming together, bringing our talents and having fun creating this book. Workbook on mental health, athlete mental health, on the performance side, the clinical side, educational side. So it's going to be really, really cool. It'll be released in a couple months, but it's fun. It's awesome. I mean, you get to meet cool people and do cool things, and like, what's life without that?
Absolutely. I agree. And then even so with these different states that you're setting up, the different practitioners, so what would they do? It'd just be an outlet for folks to reach out to them, or they'd be reaching out to teams? Like, how does all that work?
That's a great question. As a CEO, I'm the visionary. That's my job, to create relationships, nurture relationships, create partnerships with schools, organizations, so that my practitioners can be in their craft and do the work. So they're doing therapy for athletes. They're helping teams and athletes define their mental game, create team cohesion and bonding, and like have a positive culture that then creates a positive experience for the student athletes or athletes on a professional standpoint or at the high school level, to be able to thrive and have fun and grow as people while they're doing their sport. So yeah, they are in position to serve, provide the clinical service and or the mental performance consultation service, depending on what the needs are of that community or that city.
That's great. And I know I've talking to other folks in the field as well. I mean, it's such a major issue, and there's a need for more and more people like yourself to be out there helping, because there's only so much to go around, and there's probably, to me, it just seems, and you live it every day, but a lot more issues out there in this space that need to be addressed. And so I'm great to hear things that you're doing with your company and just other people that are kind of getting involved in that space. So tell us, now we do this in the show notes, but I like to do the old school. Tell us how we can find you, like some of the different areas on your social media, your website, that kind of stuff.
No, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, my website's athmindset.io. So you can learn about my team, some of the things I've done, some of the things I've done with the Roots. I'm proud of the website. My guy who's built it for me has done an amazing job. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I have those accounts under my name, Lisa Bonta Sumii, as well as AthMindset as well. And yeah, my podcast, Athlete Mindset, on anywhere you listen to your podcast for sure. But yeah, you can email me. I'll also Lisa at athmindset.io.
And soon to be on Amazon as a bestseller, correct?
Let's go. Let's go.
Gotta like that. Well, and again, we'll put all that show notes, and I really appreciate the time. You can find us on alumnidirect.com. Be sure to follow us on all types of social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and follow the show and review the show. And we want to get more followers out there to really help address these issues with athletes transition out of sports. I mean, there's so many areas that are involved. Again, we've talked about the mental health side of it, the financial literacy, but let's make a difference and help these athletes out. So thanks again, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you on the next show.
Rob, thanks so much. Appreciate you.